This is the second video, part number 2 of a video about analysis of solar and batteries and financing and uh, how the solar and battery compares to the cost of a kerosene light. Now, in this video, I'm just going to focus on the financing part. In the last video, I kind of did a little bit of analysis where we could go through different. I made a spinner box along with our little drop down box. We can go through different kind of technologies and see if those technologies which of the technologies have the savings and which have the costs. And I'm looking at this solar added cost down here to maybe I'll put this. Oops, Shift Control E to put that there. Now, these videos that I'm making, I agreed with the client in Rwanda that we were going to make these videos, and then I'm going to go through, and these are videos kind of to support a little bit of instruction that I'm giving. Okay, they call it capacity building. Okay, and so if you don't want to watch the videos, you don't have to. The videos are going to be a little bit long. They're going to have some technical things in them. And that's it. You have the freedom to turn the videos off. Okay. Now, in this video, and I'm going to try not to swear because I think that I might get in trouble if I swear too much in the videos. And then I'm also going to try not to cry, but that might be really, really difficult because I'm going to try to take our simple analysis down here. I called it a simple, and now I'm going to rename this financial analysis. And what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to save this one as that's finished, and now I'm going to save this as part 3. So if for some crazy reason you would want to follow along with this video and try to actually do some of these things, you could. Okay. We're going to take this financial analysis, and instead of making it this extremely simple thing with no inflation, no USD analysis, no debt, nothing like that. We're going to change it, and we're going to put in first some inflation. I'm going to clean up the operations analysis a little bit because in any financial analysis, even if it's a tiny, tiny little one bulb to a really big, big solar project, I argue that you should start with capacity and energy if it's electricity, or you start with volumes and prices. That's a little bit what we've done. I think we I need to do it a little bit better. Okay, and then we'll once we've put in this clean up the operational analysis, you know what I didn't do last time, which I should do almost right now, is just say, look, if we have I missed it, if we have a levelized cost of energy here in terms of the levelized cost in terms of 16 cents. This is 0.16 USD. If I would put a little cash flow with Lcoe, we'd put in we'd first put in the Lcoe, and this time I'm going to I'm going to put this Shift Control R. Okay, and then we put in the energy. The kilowatt hours we use per year, which still, by the way, do not reflect anything real because, and of course I didn't stop this with our battery, they still don't reflect the actual sunlight. And then we get the revenues. And we multiply our LCOE by the energy. How about Shift Control C, Shift Control R, and it's totally level. Okay. And then I put in the CapEx up here, which was just this number. And then once I put in the cash flow, okay, we'll take this one minus this one. We'll compute the IRR on that cash flow. And LCOE USD per K per year, USD, Control D, no, percent, and we get our target IRR, which it looks like I used 18%. Oops. Shit. Just a second. Okay, I'm glad I did that. I had a little error, of course, and the error was that I wasn't, the battery life and the solar life weren't the same. Okay, but it demonstrates, finally, kind of, I think in the last video, I kind of just went past that and showed that this levelized cost of electricity depends a lot on the lifetime of the batteries. I think I had too long a life before, and that's that. Now we're going to inflate that. We're going to put in cost of capital around that. And right now, if I, of course, change this and make this lower, that affects it. It doesn't affect it enough to really make it matter a whole lot. If I put a really big one in, which is really not big for most people, if I could make the lifetime longer, and if I make the cost of capital lower, it's a lot better. But the real problem, and the real thing I'm going to complain about a lot, is if we make this cost of capital higher, then we're getting a higher LCOE. All right, so we've kind of checked one of the boxes off now. And then eventually when we put the inflation in and the different debt to capital in, I'm probably going to be lazy, and I'm probably going to use a goal seek to find the levelized cost of electricity. So this is going to be our little financial part of the whole thing. So now let's look at some of the financing assumptions, which are a little confusing. Okay. Now part of what I'm going to do is go through some Excel. I'm going to take these financings, and they had something called a BAU case. I didn't know what it was, but it's apparently called business as usual. And in this file, they did something kind of nice. No. They made a merge cell. But let's first put some of these financing assumptions. I put Alt-EM, and I'm going to put it in our sheet. Okay. Now, sorry. Why don't we put it before this sheet? I'll create a copy of it. Fine. And I guess I must have a range name. It's the same one. Reason for not using range names, and let's call this financial assumptions. Now, part of this video will also be a little bit of scenario analysis where we put some scenarios in, and I try to make a consistent framework for naming ranges and being able to change individual assumptions or spinner boxes. I'm sorry, I seem to be more obsessed than ever with these whole spinner box deals. So we're going to incorporate some of these things. And in this business as usual case, there is some company called an off-grid solar company. They get a bank loan at 16%, and then they add, oh God, they add another 7% onto this bank loan. I suppose this bank loan reflects some credit risk. And then I don't know why the credit risk comes from people not paying off their loans. So this kind of bank loan already has some credit risk in there, but they have to add in another credit risk, and they have all these fees and all that stuff. So we're going to incorporate these kind of assumptions in the loan. And then there's something called the renewable energy fund. And this has some certainly, oh no, we don't want to do that. Oh no, I didn't want to do that either. I wanted to just, and that has some that has some a lot of a lower interest rate, and in getting 17%. I've got to stop for a minute. I was wrong. There's still we still add the 7% credit spread here, so we still get a interest rate. I'm not going to cry, but to try to make a capital intensive, something that's purely capital. That's our solar and our battery. No operating cost, really. It's all capital. To try to make that competitive with a dispatchable, this is a dispatchable technology. To try to make that competitive with a dispatchable technology that's only energy cost is going to be our classic problem. And I don't know what I can do other than again cry about this. These costs are very high. Now, I haven't even gone through all of the costs, because on top of these interest rates, we're going to have to make an assumption about we're going to have to make an assumption about, I just can't get over the 7%, by the way. Now, let's fix some of this, please. I'm going to cry again. I'm really crying about these interest rates, but it's going to make solar look bad, and we cannot explain these interest rates with inflation, because the inflation rate is supposed to be, well, oh my God, it was 11.6. Then we could explain it with inflation, but they said we're supposed to only be about 5%. The interest rate was, if the inflation rate was 20%, then those would be a really low interest rate. So we have to be able to adjust for differences in the inflation rates. Okay. Oh my God. My somebody who knew me when I was a kid asked if I'm gonna retire. Oh, give me a break. I don't want to do that. Now, the first thing is please don't ever merge the cells. I hate it. Oh, because then you can't use the entire column. And that's the biggest deal, is to be able to use the entire column. And then why don't we kind of move things around so we can make some nice scenarios? I think we're going to have to use the... What's happening here? What happened to my R? Oh, I guess there was some merge cells. Oh, please. Oh, do this too. What a pain. Now at least we can click on the whole thing and make sure that they're all starting in the kind of formatted. So I'm going to take these and just put them in a different column. And the reason I'm going to do that, Control X, of course, the reason I'm going to do that is so that we can make a scenario analysis. Oh, no. And then let's make sure we don't wrap any text. Okay. Oof. And now we have two. Now, once I've done this, let's just click on this thing. And I hope you remember this thing called Shift. Excuse me. Ooh, I better take that out. Shift, alternate, and right arrow. And when I do that, perhaps I'll make this a little bit thinner. Oh, shoot. I didn't mean to do that. Minus sign. So now we have our, this is our BAU case. And I forgot what this is. The next one is our Renewable Energy Fund case, REF case. Okay, so we just moved those together. And I'm purposely putting this kind of stuff in this thing now. I don't want all these underlines. And if you have, let me see if that works. Yes, Shift Control F works, but that Shift Control F works only, it only works because the generic macros are open. So now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Okay, and I'm going to, I don't really care about these input cells, of course. And let's put this perhaps here. Is that okay? And we'll do the same sort of thing. Shift right arrow. Okay, enough of that. Now let's waste your time a little bit more. I'm going to now let's allow this to have some different assumptions. And I really feel just a tiny little bit guilty about taking so long on some of these videos. But in any scenario, we put a code number. Okay, and in any of the, once we put a code number, now this time you cannot use the the index function because these are not in adjacent contiguous cells. So that's really not very different. And it's really not that big a deal, obviously. And then we can press Shift Control P on here. Shift Control P, and we've got it all set up, and Control Alt C. And when we press Control Alt C, we can, I don't want anything in the top thing there, and then we can get our nice little thing so we can see what's what. I think that's a little bit better, and you can see, well, these are calculated cells, these are calculated cells. Drop down box, so if I press number 2 or number 3, we get these. Now, if we would like these inputs to be arranged so that you could either go back all the way to the base case here, or alternatively, you could put a spinner box next to them. Let's do this in a little more consistent kind of way. So, I'm not getting to the key point yet, and I'm sorry about that, but I again, this is for my friends, and part of this is just a little bit of a review of how you can do all of these things, and so after I have a class that people can kind of review, that's really what I'm doing here. Okay, so this drop down box only works if the cells are in one column and in different rows, back to one thing, back to the other, and we'll put our three different scenarios in, and then we'll go back to one thing, and then back to the other, and then we'll put our code number in. Okay, that's the whole drop down box works, I suppose, either with the choose command or with the index function, the choose or the index function. Now, what we can do here is make two range names. Okay, I'm going to kind of make, and we almost need two columns. This column is the column that's from the scenario. I'll call this the scenario. And then I'm going to make one more column, and I'm going to call this the used applied column. And this one, it's going to be for this one, excuse me. I'm going to really try not to waste a lot of your time. I'm going to put something like 95, and that's going to be 9.5. We're going to divide that by 95 divided by, if I take this one and divide it by 1,000, I get the percentage. Okay, so we're going to take all of these and put a spinner box around all of these. Okay, and then what we're going to do is make sure that we can either have all of these work with a spinner box or this drop down box. And it might seem that this is all a bunch of stupid little gimmicks, and I'm not going to even disagree with that, but to be able to really, what the nice people wanted to do was to be able to put different sorts of funding scenarios in here. We can put our little drop down box here, and then we can put some of these percentages here, and we can either put the scenario box down or put little spinner boxes in, but when we change the scenario box, it'll reset everything. It's really a big kind of reset thing. So that's what I'm going to do with this little thing here. And I've explained this elsewhere, and we've got to do this with a tiny little bit of a VBA code. But the first step in doing this is to add another line. Now, when we add another line, I'm going to press Shift alternate, not Control, Shift alternate plus. Select the whole line, Control space, Shift alternate right arrow. Not plus, Shift alternate right arrow. Damn. Okay, and this one, this is right here, I'm going to put a little range name. And the range name is going to be the interest rate. And I'm going to put a little and sign and put and call this our scenario. Okay. And I'm going to put this one here. and I need to make my plus sign, excuse me here. I'm going to put this one as the interest rate, and I'm going to put this applied. And the reason this is so necessary is we need to make a little, and I'm going Shift down, Control D. The reason we need to do this is excuse me, this actually is going to be this number over here divided by 100,000, okay. All right. And I just realized I did something kind of really silly. It's going to be this one that's applied. So I'm going to move all of these right here, okay? And I don't need this one anymore. And I'm going to make this one into, excuse me for getting that wrong, Shift alternate right arrow so I can close it or not show all these ranged names. Now, what you do is number one, for the scenario, you just select this area and press Shift, Control, and F3, and it's going to name all the ranges, not range the names, and it took them from the right column. Now I'm going to do the same thing here, but give me just a minute to break this so you don't have to watch it all. Okay, I'm back. So I just took me a little bit of time, and what I did was I just made these little spinner boxes and put them all over here on the side. And what we're going to do, just to let you know, is if we move this, so if we start on our business as usual case, what we'd like to do and what we'll do, we'll have to do this with a little bit of a macro, just a little macro. Please don't get mad at me for a macro. We're going to take all of these numbers and, well, I can say copy and paste, but we'll make all of these numbers equal to these numbers times 1,000, or in this case, just times 1, and in this case, times 1, in other cases, times 1,000. And then this one over here will just be equal to this number divided by 1,000, except for this one, oops, 10,000, excuse me for that. And then we can just push this a little bit down or up. And I really did want it to be 1,000. And this would be 160 perhaps. And then what we can do is take this number and copy it, and we can put it into our little illustration. Okay, and I've done this before. I know. And I'm sorry about this one. Well, this would be the base. Let's perhaps put the. Actually, that's not really exactly right. Because we'll do this one with the effective interest rate down here. This total interest rate here. This total. This absurd interest rate. So we can push this up and down, and when we push this up and down, we can also put our little scenario in it. Okay, now in order to do that, okay, so I really should be listing the step by steps, and I think I'll list the steps by steps in a little thing I put on the video. Okay, what happens if we could really get a lower solar cost, and when we can get a really lower solar cost and a different kind of interest rate, what is the effect on the amount you pay for this dispatchable? You can turn the kerosene light on and off versus this non-dispatchable with battery system where you cannot turn it on and off. What's the final result. Okay, so let's just go and kind of clean this up. Now, I'm not going to repeat this over and over again, but the first step is we need range names. And the reason we need range names, so I'm selecting all of these and pressing Shift Control F3. I didn't press it. Shift Control F3. And I don't want the top row, and I want the right column. So all of these have range names. And I actually did this a little bit badly. And does this, I just press the undo, Control D, copy this down. And don't worry about these kind of things. The only thing to worry would like to do is whenever we're going to attach a macro to this, and whenever we change this one, we're going to have the scenario copy to this one. So these range names are going to be copied. And again, I know I've done this once to use, and now I'm a big advocate of, it's almost like the reset button, copy scenario. And we'll just press the create button. Okay, we already kind of have almost the same thing here. And for some reason, they didn't copy. And I guess I'll have to do it again. Control C, and put those here. Okay, and now I'm going to turn off the video, but we'll do the first kind of one here. We have some junk, and then we say that we just put a range name. Of course, you could copy this even and put it here and put an equal sign and take range, which I'll perhaps do it one more time. And it's not that hard if you don't do the silly thing I'm doing. So right now, I'm going to do it one more time. But this time, let's just select this area, range with the thing, Control C, and put an equal sign, Control V, and just put our little thing down here. Maybe somebody's really good and could tell me how I can do a double kind of copy. So let me just pause and redo. Now I've put all the range names in, and now we just need to multiply most of these things by 1,000. And I called it copy. And now what we do is if we switch a scenario around, okay, we want these things to all come from here, but we want to copy these things over to here, multiply it by 1,000 and do all of that. So all we do is go to this macro and go to this one that says copy scenario and attach it to it. And then when we attach it, one more time, and hopefully it won't be such a mess. And now I believe everything's working okay. Okay, so whenever now all of this changed and these things are equal to these, but I can just push this a little bit higher, and then I can also do a scenario. So that's just a review of the kind of scenario analysis we can do. And I hope we can change these ones too, right? Okay, so we can kind of change any of these things now. Now let's go and move to the financial analysis. Okay, and this is really the second part in a two-part video. And I'm going to get a little bit more advanced because we have a different lifetime. Now, this time, instead of, I'm going to allow the battery to have a different lifetime. I think that's a pretty the battery. So we really should put a little bit of a fancy thing on this. And this this next one has to be true. So we're certainly not going to replace the battery if we're at the end of the life. Okay. And we put the cost of the battery in, and with any kind of thing, I really should have done this. Excuse me, this is just any kind of analysis. We'll put the solar capacity in. And with just about any kind of analysis, we should also, I believe, keep the costs a little bit separate from the cost assumptions, kind of separate from our operational assumptions. So here's our battery capacity, and then I don't have a degradation rate in here yet. Okay, and I'm not going to put one in this kind of analysis, and I really didn't need this. Excuse me for this. Okay, so we have the battery capacity and the battery energy, and that's how we start. And then we work through some of our fundamental operating assumptions without any financing. And I even put a little bit of a NPV, a target IRR in here. And we're going to change this and allow a reset button to this. And now I have to, I've got a call, so I'm going to have to pause. This is getting to be a video that's really, really way too long. I'm going to, after we put in economics, which I'm going to re-put operational, then we really should put some macroeconomic assumptions in. And why don't we just lay out them all right now? Because I really am making this as I'm just working on it. And we should put a USD inflation. And I'm making it very simple, and I'm going to put local inflation, which is Rwanda franc inflation. And then we're going to put in the exchange rate, and I'm going to put it purchase power parity. Okay. And now what we can do then is, once we have this exchange rate, and this time I'm not going to put any kind of inflation or deflation in here. And then we can put free cash flow. But this time we better put a inflation rate in. Okay, and perhaps I should go up here and put really, maybe all the way up here, I'll put driver 1 and driver 2. Now, once we have an inflation rate in, that will change our payback period and our assumption and everything else. And then to compute the isn't this got 2 E's? Okay, and no, it's got an E there. That's what it's got. I looked a little bit wrong. Then we can compute our LCOE with simple rate, and what we should do up here is put this carrying charge is nominal. Sorry. And then we're going to put a sorry, Control D, and we'll put a real carrying charge rate that's adjusted for inflation. And when we put in a real carrying charge rate, then we can put cash flow with LCOE, and we can put LCOE nominal. And then to really test out what it is, we'll put LCOE. This is inflated. And what we're going to do is get our real levelized cost up here, our levelized cost, which will be a nominal number. And we should really do this in real terms. Okay. And we'll get a different amount when we have to inflate it or not, and we'll prove that this whole thing kind of works. And we'll put the same sort of things down here, the energy and all this. Now I'm still not sorry about this, putting the battery replacement in. Okay, now once we have kind of all these basic things done, then we'll move to the financing. And I don't care how simple it is. We're going to put a uses, funds, and then sources. And the sources will be debt and equity. And once we have the uses and sources of funds, we'll put the debt repayment as once we have these, and then these kind of drivers will all come from the financial assumptions, and it will always come from this kind of applied one up here. And this is unfortunately divided by 12, so not only is the interest rate so high, it's all this. And then we'll put our opening debt balance, and then we'll put less the repayment. And the repayment is going to have to be a little bit, I'm not going to do something fancy. I'm just going to have a kind of flat repayment here with the PMT function. And the best way to do this is with debt repayment period and debt repayment amount. Okay, and then we'll put our closing balance. And then I think we better separate out the credit spread payment and the funding payment. Okay, so these people, they're charging you this additional 7% on top of everything, which is not in this scenario, but it's down here. Okay, and I have to fix one, and then our funding payment is going to be the interest rate we have up here, plus the service commission, plus the management fee, and all of this. And there's actually a upfront fee and all of that. So we'll put, even though it's in such a simple kind of thing up here, we and uses of funds, we better put the capital expenditures, and then below there we'll put the and we'll put some commitment fees, and then we can even get a total, and we can even down here get a total, of course, too. Okay. And then once we have all of this finished, then we can move over. We can go down here and put a little cash flow. And we start with our what we have up here, which is our revenues, and I'm going to assume we have no operating expenses. I don't see, if you have to, somebody has to go clean their own panel, I'm not going to call that part of our thing. This is really a lease payment. And then we can put less the funding payment. And then we can put net cash flow. And then we can put in our own kind of, this is, I don't know what to say about this really, this ridiculous credit spread that they start. So we can put, I'm going to put less the credit spread, but we really pay that to ourselves. We're going to earn that credit spread. So, I'm not going to put it in. I just can't. Okay. And then let's put in the equity cash flow, including the credit spread. And then we can put our equity IR with the credit spread. And then we can put, well, I took a break and I really just want to finish this video now so badly. I'm going to leave it on because I'm not going to delete the video because my friends want to kind of get a little bit of background on how these things work. Okay. Now, so you recall we put in all of the different kind of systems, not solar systems, home. Well, it's a solar systems with the Earth, right? Okay. Here's the end result. We can put in different financings. Now I'm going to put in a little bit of a higher cost of capital. I put in a business as usual case. And now let's even look at our kind of best case. And remember this energy and this capacity factor kind of baloney. They're not true yet. That's the next video, and then the next video is really a little bit more important. So if we had this business as usual case, we'd have 13 US cents per kilowatt hour. With this renewable energy fund and some lower interest rates, we'd have this one. And if we got, we just didn't have any financing, we'd have 12 cents. If we had really, really good financing, where we could put 90% of our, get it 90% financed, and we'd get it for 10 years instead of 3 years, and we'd have a much lower interest rate. And we'll go through that in a minute. Then we could get it all the way down to 1.67. So it goes from, let me see, 13 cents down to 10 cents. Now, it's very sensitive to the consumer discount rate, too. If I could get a 10% consumer discount rate, then we get lower costs in all of them. So as you should expect, solar is capital intensive, and we should have this. And then I should have put PAY. This is kind of this thing where, okay, if we have a 3-year financing, we're going to have to spend 1,000. This whole thing cost, I don't even have the total cost here. I can't believe that. Oh, well, where should I put? I'll put the total cost down here. Okay, now I'm just in a minute, I'm going to show you just kind of the end result. So our total cost is this, and come on, and the upfront cost is so horrible. If we could have done it with much cheaper financing, then our first year cost is $312 out of this. And now if we go to these much smaller ones, then it starts getting ridiculous. The cost is $1 per kilowatt hour, and that's with the Western one, and it's $1.6, and it doesn't come close to working. And the primary reason is this upfront cost, which now you can see what could happen if we could really lower this upfront cost, and not only lower this upfront cost, then get it to better financing. We're still at 15 US cents per kilowatt hour, and it's still, unfortunately, this is kind of the really bad news, even if we have a kind of, well, if we have a really inefficient kind of kerosene, then to get the same amount of light we save money, but to get the same amount of energy we make money. And the nice thing about this is now you can change this. Yeah, let's change this. So now we've got 1.92 cents. This one only $2 per watt. How much do we have to go down to get it to produce a savings? And I even put a little analysis of CO2 in here. So this file has all of this stuff, and the way this one works is almost identical to all that scenario analysis. What happens is if you put it back to the case, it just resets this case. So remember, we put all of our different parameters in our little database, and then if I want to change this is our base case, and I want to push this down, then I get a different cost per watt. And as soon as I change this back to another case, it just resets this number. It actually resets this 100 to the 100%. And just as all of the others, there's a little bit of a macro that just goes, and this is a easier macro. Every time you change the scenario, then you can fix it and allow it to reset. Now, this is a preview for our next analysis, which is really more interesting, kind of a little bit of a supply and demand analysis. And I'm just going to go through and finish this video by explaining the cash flow. So just as any kind of cash flow, start with all the operations, go through the free cash flow. We went through a little bit of a levelized cost analysis. Now, when we do this is still all in USD. Here is the nominal discount rate, and then we can put a real discount rate. You get a carrying charge, or you get with the real carrying charge, you can then compute the inflated. You can start with a lower cost and allow it to inflate, and the longer the period, the more that makes a difference. And then, this is really a little bit bad. I didn't put our little format control. Now, I should have told you this, I also added a scenario where everything's up front, there's no gearing at all. And I put another thing, and what's really happening is these are kind of banks. It's like bank financing. The bank gets some money at a cheap rate, and then they put a credit premium. So at the end of the day, you have to pay 3.5% for your solar, and you can borrow it for 10 years, compared to these horrible ones where you can only borrow it for 3 years. The bank, in this case, the bank gets 9.5, but then it charges you another 7%. Ouch! And that 7% is for the credit spread, which for me seems really high, because you can just take these things back if you don't get paid. And that would really depend on the credit experience of the different consumers. So we're really talking about banking, housing, databases, probability of default, loss given default when we do all of these things. All right, so I hope I copied this. I'm a little emotional right now, and then I'm going to put that right down here so we can look at both the kind of financing we have and the. So let's put now let's make our business as usual case where let's put, I'm going to go down to this really kind of good case. So the whole model just changes. You put some money, you have to put some money up front. Okay, and then you pay off your loan in 3 years, which is really almost like paying it off up front. The difference is really not much. And then you have to pay a credit spread plus get the thing funded. Now, these people who are on lending, the on lending people get this 7%. The question is really, how much do they actually need? And really, if you're going to make a model of them, you'd have to make a model of how much they're like a bank. They have to put some capital up to reserve for the losses they take. And as long as the losses are less than this, compensation for the losses is less than the 7%, and they're making a lot of money on the 7%, then they're going to be okay. They also make some fees. And then they have to pay this funding. So this is the fees. Well, 2% is a lot. 2% is more of a credit spread for most. And that now, when you finally get to the cash flow, well, the cash flow, if we just look at this from a consumer perspective, they have to put their own money down. That's how much they take out. And then they have to get this loan back. They have to pay off the loan, and then they get a free solar panel. If it was the renewable energy fund, they have to pay a little more up front, but they get a lower interest rate, and then they still get it back. I said, well, if it's like one of these loans in Europe or something, well, you could get a much longer loan, and then your payment goes way down. And then you compare that to how much energy. Of course, I don't have any degradation yet. And we're assuming in this kind of ridiculous case that the whole amount the battery can produce when it discharges, that's the energy you get. And then to get the levelized cost of electricity for these kind of scenarios, I said we'd do a goal seek. You don't have to do a goal seek. You take the net present value at the consumer discount rate. Now, I really need to put our little, here it is. And this consumer discount rate, that's the kind of sad thing. What is this consumer discount rate? How high is it really? If it's a lot higher, then you'd just rather pay. You wouldn't want anything capital intensive. You'd rather just pay for that dispatchable kerosene. If it's a higher discount rate, then you take the net present value of all of the payments you get. But when you put the energy, you take the inflation. This is the US inflation you take out, and you have got to include this very first payment up here, where you don't get any energy. And then you can get the total amount you put in compared to the total amount you pay out. And with the higher discount rate, this goes up, the cost. If we put a different in, and now we did the whole thing up front. Okay, this is the whole thing up front. Look at this levelized cost of electricity is $2.8. If it's down to 5%, it's only $1.4 only. That's a heck of a very high rate, and we can try a different one. All right, and I think I'm going to stop here. Now, what I've really tried to do is you can read all these articles and you can try to do this yourself. I mean, try to understand these. I've tried to put enough data in this file. Now, I haven't made the last part, which is to go through the patterns, but I've tried. Oh, look, I even put a mosquito thing that you can only get for 16 USD. That sounds like it's really good. Okay, and uh, uh, then you can put all your get all your data together, get all your financing data together, get some inflation data. Here's doing your financial analysis. Go through all the kerosene data, including how much they use. Go through the electricity costs. Go through the CO2 costs somewhere down here. Where did I put that? CO2 costs here. Okay, and that's all in the file and it's all on the website. And with that, you've got kind of all the variables that could drive what the cost of one of these solar home systems is compared to this. Now, I'm not finished because I'm moving to a microgrid analysis. And in the microgrid analysis, we really cannot accept these simplistic capacity factors. We have to really look at how much sunlight we get in different periods. And if we're going to do a serious analysis, there's absolutely no way we can just ignore that. Okay, but it's a little bit of an introduction. I think it shows the problems and it shows we need to go forward. There's a lot to do to get these costs down and to figure out a way, especially for small little households, how to reduce the cost of solar plus batteries until we get to something that's much more competitive with the actual cost of the kerosene. I'm not being negative, I hope. I'm very hopeful that all this battery stuff and everything will work. I'm really, really hopeful. But I think we should be very, very objective about making all the assumptions, getting all the data together, making it very real, and looking at all of the cost, blah blah blah. Oh, God, I can never get rid of that stupid thing. Okay, enough of that.